Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's roundtable on optimizing vector control interventions towards malaria elimination in Nigeria. Thank you for joining us. This is the first meeting of a three-part series which KAMA is hosting with partners over the next 2 months. The second and third meetings will take a more global approach and will end in a call to action to increase the investments towards malaria elimination. I am Ochuko Keyamo Onyige, Program Director for KAMA. GBC Health KAMA, which is the Corporate Alliance on Malaria in Africa, is a unique coalition of companies working on various together to drive impact and end malaria in Africa. We do this in part by creating platforms like this to learn from each other and to share experiences of what works along with the challenges and to collaborate on solutions that generate tangible results and impact. We are hosting this event in collaboration with the Ministry of Health National Malaria Elimination Program and supported by KAMA members, including Vestergaard, Access Bank, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Aliko Dangote Foundation, and Nigerian breweries. I'm very pleased to be joined by my esteemed colleagues today, and a special welcome to our members on the call. We would also like to thank our partners, the NMEP, who helped organize this webinar. And of course, thanks to all our speakers and to everyone in the audience for joining us. As we know, malaria is a major cause of morbidity and mortality in Africa, especially in Nigeria. And it has proven that malaria vector control is critical and a core strategy for malaria elimination. All successful malaria elimination programs have used a combination of vector control methods. Implementation of strategies such as mass and routine distribution of LLIN, as well as Irs in combination with malaria case management, has significantly changed the malaria prevalence status in a number of malaria endemic regions, from that of malaria burden to malaria elimination stages. This desired outcome has remained unattained across Nigeria. However, this is thought to be largely due to a number of factors. Over the course of today's roundtable, we will look at the current gaps, the challenges in vector control interventions in Nigeria, and ways to optimize cross-sectoral engagement and public-private partnerships to reach elimination. We'll also highlight the importance and present the business case for vector control in Nigeria. We have an amazing lineup of speakers who will address this issue in 2 panel sessions. But before I introduce our speakers, I have a few logistics notes. First, if you have questions for our speakers or contributions to make, please feel free to send it via the Q&A chat box. We'll respond to questions and comments in time when we get to that session. Secondly, today's roundtable will be available on demand on YouTube in the coming days. Related contents and all that is associated with today's events will be sent to all registered participants. We also encourage you to share comments and insights from today's roundtable on social media using the hashtag #OptimizeVectorControl, #InvestMalaria. So without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Omobolanle Victor Laniya, who is the head of Sustainability Access Bank and KAMA co-chair, for a welcome remark. Bolanle, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ochuko. And I assume you can hear me loud and clear?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I trust that we've had a great day so far. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of us to the roundtable today, optimizing vector control interventions towards malaria elimination in Nigeria. So today's roundtable is going to be an exciting one because it's the first in a series of dialogues to ensure continued and increased malaria investments, but not only investments, but also to ensure that together we can end malaria in Africa, where we bear the largest burden for malaria. I thank KAMA for organizing the session. All of us together, all members working together. And I thank all our speakers for taking their time to participate today at the roundtable. As the co-chair, I can assure you that KAMA is committed to this cause. The roundtable today provides us a platform wherein all key stakeholders can discuss strategies to optimize vector control interventions for malaria elimination in Nigeria. The session aims to highlight opportunities and challenges for both vector control and IRS in Nigeria, consider the new malaria strategic plan, especially for Nigeria, 2021 to 2025, and discuss ways to increase resources, partnerships, and engagement, not only in Nigeria, but across Africa, because as we know, we're Pan-Africa, we're not just Nigeria related. This year, in addition to KAMA's leadership events, we have a series of high-level programs that have been organized as part of our strategic plan for increased commitment and engagement at both the public and private sector levels. In line with this, we call for increased action from all malaria stakeholders towards efforts at ending malaria. KAMA is happy and willing to work with you and to partner with you on this journey. While there's been significant progress, we may say, malaria still remains one of the leading causes of death across Africa. And according to the 2020 World Malaria Report, Nigeria, where I currently am located, alone contributes over 23% of the global malaria deaths, while Africa is home to over 90% of the cases globally. We therefore must continue to discuss and work together, collaborate to implement existing and new strategies to address malaria prevalence in our various countries and value the collaboration that we have, the strength of collaboration to be able to achieve our overall goals. As a member of this alliance, Access Bank is proud of all the progress and continuous efforts we've made towards malaria elimination in Africa. I therefore congratulate all KAMA members and indeed everyone on this platform today, as none of this would be possible without your support. We must continue to take up the responsibility and work together for the good of our society. I truly look forward to learning from you all. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Omobanale, for that great remark. In the same vein, I would like to welcome Dr. Perpetual Uhumobi. She's the National Coordinator, Malaria Elimination Program, Nigeria, for our opening remark. Dr. Perpetual, over to you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Ochuko, KAMA, for this opportunity. Excuse me. So it gives me great pleasure to give the opening remarks in this very important occasion of the roundtable on optimizing vector control interventions towards malaria elimination in Nigeria. Now, malaria, we all know, is still a major public health challenge for us, particularly in Nigeria, but we are also determined as a nation to reduce the burden to an insignificant level and to finally eliminate it from Nigeria. If you recall that the National Malaria Strategic Plan 2024 to 2020 presented a very determined plan to commence in earnest a transition from malaria control towards malaria elimination. It signified the efforts at ensuring a reduction in ill health and deaths caused by malaria and a drive towards the eventual elimination of malaria in the country. The implementation of that plan resulted in further reduction in prevalence of malaria from 27% in 2015 from the Malaria Indicator Survey to 23% in 2018 from the NDHS that was conducted in 2018. During the period of implementation of the last strategic plan, a total of 130.4 million long-lasting insecticidal nets were distributed through net replacement campaigns in 33 states of the country, while over 16.3 million nets, insecticide-treated nets, were distributed through the routine channels that include the ANC and immunization clinic, that the pregnant women attending ANC clinics and children under 5 in immunization clinics. The development of the current malaria strategic plan, which is from 2021 to 2025, is therefore anchored on lessons learned over the years. The vision of the new strategic plan is to achieve a malaria-free Nigeria, while the goal is to achieve a parasite prevalence of less than 10% by 2025, and a reduction in malaria-related mortality to less than 50 deaths per 1,000 live births. Our priority, therefore, is to ensure the delivery of robust multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral, and appropriate strategy mixes that are based on the stratification of Nigeria into low, medium, high, and very high epidemiological areas to achieve a rapid reduction in the malaria burden and deaths, while maintaining a consistency with the key principles and pillars of the National Strategic Health Development Plan of the country. Objective 1 of the new National Malaria Strategic Plan therefore targeted at improving access and utilization of vector control interventions to at least 80% of targeted population by 2025. This objective will focus on scaling up vector control interventions based on the epidemiological stratification map and vector surveillance information generated from time to time. The 3 vector control strategies to be deployed are use of insecticide-treated nets, targeted indoor residual spray, and targeted larval source management in different populations. The deployment of these 3 strategies at operational level will be guided by the local government area strategy matrix as recommended in the stratification results. Just to know that this stratification was done by NMEP with technical support from the WHO Global Malaria Program. You may wish to know that the deployment of vector control interventions over the years are an integral part of the implementation of our malaria strategic plan, with the aim of achieving a truly integrated vector management structure. These interventions include mass and routine distribution of insecticide-treated nets as a core strategy, and this is complemented by indoor residual spray in targeted areas. Larval source management as supplementary measure, and finally promoting the use of personal protective equipment. You will agree with me that we surely need to find a balance in the deployment of these approaches for maximum impact towards accelerating our progress to our ultimate vision of a malaria-free Nigeria. The overall objective of many of the earlier plans was to scale up intervention package for impact to achieve reduction of the burden of disease or mortality due to malaria by great percentages. We will continue to explore all avenues to scale up all proven high impact interventions across the various epidemiological and entomological settings in the country. This has increasingly become necessary with the growing incidence of insecticide resistance, necessitating the introduction of newer technologies, particularly the dual active ingredient products, often referred to as dual AIs. In May 2015, the Global Technical Strategy for Malaria 2016 to 2020 was adopted by the World Health Organization and its member states. The strategy set the target of reducing global malaria incidence and mortality rates by at least 90% by 2030, with near-term milestones of reduction in malaria case incidence and death rates at least 40%, and the elimination of malaria in at least 10 countries by 2020. The report notes that these targets can only be achieved with strong political will, country leadership, and significantly increased investment. And this has also necessitated the adoption of the high burden, high impact approach recommended by WHO by the country. And this was factored into the development of the new malaria strategic plan. I would like to, on the panel discussion today, which is one of the panel discussions is on the challenges and opportunities of indoor residual spraying implementation in Nigeria. I would like to particularly emphasize on this, which has been proven to be a high impact intervention that could complement mass distribution of ITNs. While we know that this is not proposed for resistant mitigation, but as an alternative to ITNs, the new malaria strategic plan recognizes a targeted implementation of this intervention, that's the indoor residual spray. However, it is sad to note that there are no resource scale-up in Nigeria through existing funding channels. This strategy is therefore proposed for high burden states to rapidly reduce burden of disease or to take sustainability or to take the lowest burden states closer to elimination as an acceleration tool. Issues around sustainability of resources and risk of rebound if IRS were interrupted would need to be carefully considered, and a clear transition plan should be in place. New innovations, particularly those that address the emergent threats of insecticide resistance and modern effective malaria control methods will be considered as they become available. All vector control interventions will be deployed in the context of integrated vector management. In the year 2000, malaria was identified as one of the biggest impediments to global development and selected as a critical global target of the Millennium Development Goals. The target set in the MDG Target 6C was to halt and begin to reverse the incidence of malaria by 2015. In the last 2 decades, Nigeria and her partners have committed significant human, financial, and material resources to reduce malaria burden and to work towards achieving a malaria-free status. The implementation of the prioritized strategies and key activities will be rested on the high burden, high impact approach of high political will, which has the 4 pillars that include high political will, strategic information to drive impact, better guidance for policies and strategies with a coordinated national malaria response. We will continue to work with all our partners in the malaria elimination effort. Progress towards a malaria-free status is a continuous process and not a set of independent stages. Countries, subnational areas, and communities are situated at different points on the path towards malaria elimination, and their rate of progress will differ and depend on the level of investment, biological determinants that's related to affected populations, the parasites, and the vectors. Environmental factors are also a part, the strength of health system, as well as social, demographic, political, and economic realities. It is therefore hoped that this roundtable meeting will provide a platform to truly integrate efforts from all sectors towards optimizing vector control interventions for malaria elimination in Nigeria. Together, we can win the fight against malaria and kick out malaria in Nigeria for good. God bless Nigeria, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Perpetual, for that beautiful remark. And thank you for paving the way for the next session, which is a panel session. Now we'll turn it over to the panel session for today's meeting. The first panel is on challenges and opportunities of IRS implementation in Nigeria. Joining me on this panel includes 5 amazing speakers. First is Mr. Dr. Philip Okoko, Deputy Director, Head of High-End Branch, National Malaria Elimination, NMEP. We have Dr. Linda Ozo from Malaria Program, from WHO, who is a Malaria Program Manager, WHO Nigeria. We have Melissa Mizu, who is a Malaria Technical Advisor at PMI. We have Justin Margbert, Market Manager at Bayer. And then finally, we have Samuel Asiedu. He's the Executive Director of Anglo-Gold Ashanti Malaria Control Program. I will welcome you all to join me on this panel. Please turn on your video and also please unmute your line when you want to speak. Welcome to the panel. So moving on to the discussion, yeah, I can see you all turning in. Okay, so I'm moving on to the discussion. I will direct my first question to Philip. What is the impact of vector control tools on malaria indicators in Nigeria? And what are the opportunities for vector control interventions in Nigeria in light of the new National Malaria Strategic Plan? We would like to hear from you, Philip. Over.
So I was just appreciating my national coordinator for that robust speech that has already addressed a lot of things, and based on the question you just asked, the impact of vector control tools. Like you know already, we are talking about a malaria-free Nigeria. And of course, the new strategic plan is talking about a holistic application of the various vector control interventions, and basically to improve access and utilization of vector control interventions to at least 80% of the targeted populations by 2025. So that strategic plan is targeting a multi-pronged approach to vector control implementation. And that will include mass distribution of ITNs, sustenance of the continuous distribution channels. You recall that the national coordinator talked about ANC and EPI. We might even want to expand it to the school-based and community-based distribution channels. And we also want to deploy targeted implementation of IRS and LSM. And all of this will be based on the outputs of the stratification results that have been given so far. Now, how has it contributed? We recall from her speech that over 130 million ITNs have been distributed since 2009, and 16 million ITNs distributed through the ANC and EPI channels. And through this period, we've experienced gradual improvement in the utilization of ITNs. By 2013, only 16% of children were sleeping under ITNs. But by 2018, we have about 52%. I'm sure if we return again to do another survey, we'll see an improved number. The same thing for the pregnant women, 17% in 2013, and it's now 58%. And I'm also sure we will see an improved number. LSM, IRS have not been that well implemented in the country, but we've had very minimal deployment of IRS over time. In 2016, we did a piloted distribution implementation of IRS in the 6 geopolitical zones, and we were able to cover and protect about 130,000 persons. That's like a drop in the ocean when you're talking about the population of Nigeria. And in 2013, we were also able to do the same thing in Nasarawa State, 2 LGAs in Nasarawa State, where over 300,000 persons were protected. So we can see that a lot has happened, even in this wise, when we talk about vector control. But when you are looking at Nigeria, we cannot say we have done enough, because so much ground is still left to be covered. Particularly what I would just like to bring out in the whole of this is the end of the story, and which is that as of 2015, we had 27% prevalence for malaria, but today we have 23%. And I'm sure by the time we do the next MIS, we probably see a better figure going on. So what are the opportunities that are available for vector control as far as Nigeria is concerned. We see that the country is increasingly leveraging on the use of evidence in the deployment of vector control interventions and use of the tools, especially in the light of the growing spread of insecticide resistance across the country. So a lot of vector steadiness sites have been established across different states. Not yet enough, but quite a lot of improvement has happened in that wise. And so we're increasingly having good evidence as to the right kind of tools to deploy. And in the long run, what it means is that we are saving resources because we are hitting the nail on the head with the evidence that is at our hands. The next thing is that we have availability of guidance documents that speak to vector control interventions. When we have a document, the stratification of the country has been done with the provision of intervention mixes that will be suitable for different states. So not all states are on equal ground as far as their progress towards elimination is concerned. So different intervention mixes are proposed for the different states. One good thing that's also happening for us is the growing public and private sector interest in vector control interventions, particularly Irs. We are seeing increasing interest in this area, and we want to really leverage on that and see how far it can get the country towards elimination. And I would like to end this by just mentioning a few of the challenges that we face. And that one of the big challenges is that we have low coverage of ITNs in states that are not supported by partners. So far in the country, we have 13 states that have not been supported in a long while. The country has made a lot of effort and tried to secure grants from places like the World Bank in order to cover those states. I'm sure by the time implementation begins there, it will improve our statistics. And then the IRS and LSM implementation, which are complementary strategies, have not been really well funded. The National Coordinator talked about it in her speech, and they have been sparsely implemented. That's a major challenge for us. We want that add-on, the benefit of that add-on to be seen in this country. And one other thing that we just want to put to the table too is the fact that once we are able to carry on this added IRS implementation, we need to be careful not to discontinue it so that we can consolidate the gains that would have been gotten from adding on that particular intervention. That's my humble submission, and over to you, Coach.
Thank you, Philip, for that. You mentioned a number of things in just a short 5 minutes. You mentioned a couple of challenges and opportunities. And one of the things I would like to come back with you on is on, you said IRS and LSM has not been properly implemented in Nigeria. We would like to know why. What are you mentioned a couple of challenges, which is funding is one of them, but we want to know more. Why? No, you don't have to respond now. I'll come back. That's one of the questions you'll respond to later. So just take your time. We would like to know why and what can we do moving forward to ensure that we'll maximize the, the available interventions that we have in Nigeria. Thank you. And then you also mentioned stratification, guidance with support from WHO. That will lead me to my next question to Linda Ozor from WHO. Please, can you tell us the intervention prioritization framework for countries, especially the high burden countries? Thank you. Dr. Linda. Okay, so, oh yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was still muted. Yes, okay. I did hear you. So I was just thanking and appreciating you for once again taking the lead on bringing the private and public sector together to discuss malaria control, especially in Nigeria, the highest burden country. And as you rightly mentioned, yes, there's a prioritization framework within the context of the high burden to high impact framework. And this prioritization is very much linked to the discussions I've heard so far from the National Coordinator and Dr. Philip Oyale. And it's no news that Nigeria continues to occupy an unenviable position in the global malaria landscape. And looking at we know that vector control is a vital component of malaria elimination and control strategies. And so WHO encourages resource prioritization, and not just resource prioritization, prioritization of interventions. I did hear the national coordinator, talk about how Nigeria was able to use prioritization exercise to determine what interventions to deploy at the various areas. This is very key. I won't go into narrating the various elements of vector control, which has been brilliantly taken by Mr. Philip Oyale, but I would just like to state that in order to achieve maximum impact, first we need to look at the pillars of action. And this involves both strengthening both the intersectoral and intra, and multi-sectoral collaboration towards vector control. We need to engage and mobilize communities, and as well as enhance vector surveillance. We also need to ensure and enhance vector control capacity, as well as increase basic and applied research and innovations for vector control. And so talking about prioritization framework, in Nigeria, for instance, if I drill it down to Nigeria, there has been an exercise, again, I keep coming back to this, the national coordinator spoke about it and Philip just alluded to that. There was an stratification exercise that took into cognizance the local context, looking at the local data, looking at the vector bionomics, looking at the local situation. And so prioritization is not to do with just vector control, but when you're prioritizing interventions, you take into consideration all other elements of malaria control and prevention and case management interventions. And so in determining your intervention mixes, especially in resource-constrained environments like Nigeria, you need to be sure that you have achieved optimal use for either or both of the interventions that you're using. There are very clear guidance on how to deploy your ITNs, your IRS, and if you must, when I say must, if you must use them in combination, then there are very clear guidance on how to use them. So in determining your intervention mixes, the LLIM, for instance, one thing I know Nigeria did during the stratification exercise was to determine areas within the country. So it has been a one size fits all. But we know that as the malaria map continues to shrink and the malaria becomes more heterogeneous, the one size fits it all will no longer be applicable in the situation. And so determining the vector type and the vector control intervention type, or the general malaria intervention mixes that will be able to drive impact in a particular location or situation becomes very important. And so determining, for instance, in Nigeria, as I was mentioning, there was taking LLIM, for instance, the determination that some areas, especially the urban areas, may not benefit a lot from mass distribution of LLIM. And so there were attempts at determining strategies through which you can use to reach the people living in the urban areas, living in the rich settlements with LLIM or vector control mechanisms. And also, we know that there are many threats to vector control in Nigeria, and not just Nigeria, in Africa, and in fact around the globe, insecticide resistance. And so determining and doing an analysis of the insecticide viability and what insecticide is are efficacious in a particular context, it's very key in optimizing and deploying your vector control intervention. Sorry, I'm looking at your time and I hope I'm not overshooting them. And so I would encourage that as much as possible, that we need to also, that's what the framework, the WHO framework largely emphasizes on the need to ensure that we plan, we prioritize, and we deploy interventions in line with areas of how to achieve maximum impact. So there's no two areas or two countries that are the same, but prioritizing your vector control interventions. For instance, LLIN is the main thrust in Nigeria for vector control. And so have we achieved universal coverage with the LLIN? Have we been able to read the nooks and crannies with LLIN? Up until then, will you start looking at introducing other vector control interventions? And where you have to introduce others, then you have to determine the additional benefits. I mean, Philip did mention other complementary vector control interventions, the larval source management, the use of protective, insecticide protective clothing. I know Ochiko is warning me for time, so maybe I'll wait on and take questions from the attendees. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Linda. Thank you very much. You said plan, prioritize, deploy interventions in order for us to maximize impact. That is a quote we could take away from this meeting. And I also hear you say tailor whatever that has been produced by WHO to different countries. What works for country A may not work for country B. So we need to tailor and adapt to our local terrain. Thank you for that. So we will come back to you. Hopefully we'll have time to do that. So moving on to the next speaker, I will throw this next question to Melissa from PMI. PMI has been at the forefront of IRS implementation in Africa. How do we strike a balance in IRS implementation alongside other vector control interventions? Melissa, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. So PMI supports 24 partner countries in sub-Saharan Africa and 3 programs in the greater Mekong subregion in Southeast Asia to control and eliminate malaria. PMI delivers cost-effective, life-saving malaria interventions, such as vector control and essential medicines, alongside providing technical and operational assistance to empower partner countries. Nigeria has been a PMI partner country since 2010. In relation to vector control, PMI has embraced the global guidance from the WHO, which the most recent guidance states recommending ensuring access to effective vector control using ITNs or IRS at optimal coverage levels for all populations at risk of malaria in most epidemiological and ecological settings. The 2 main vector control interventions used by PMI are IRS and ITNs, and we suggest that countries ensure high coverage and quality with 1 vector control intervention in an area before deploying supplementary interventions. Selection of primary vector control interventions is evidence-based, using data on vector binomics and insecticide resistance. But it is also very much shaped by funding, national strategies and policies, and community acceptance. The effectiveness of a vector control intervention is affected by mosquito behavior and insecticide resistance. And PMI established an insectary in Nigeria to provide space for mosquito rearing, susceptible mosquitoes for conducting resistance testing, and laboratory space to do molecular testing. PMI continues to support entomological surveillance and insecticide resistance monitoring of malaria vectors to allow for this evidence-based decision-making, since vector populations can change over time in response to control interventions. As previously mentioned, ITNs are the primary vector control intervention used in Nigeria. There's widespread resistance to pyrethroids pretty much throughout the country. And so increased detailed data on mosquito resistance patterns over time allows for this evidence-based decision-making for the most appropriate and most cost-effective ITN choice at the state level. The ability of new types of ITNs, PBOs, and dual active ingredient nets potentially provide an opportunity to incorporate more integrated vector control management approaches. In addition to screening mosquito populations for the insecticides that are used on ITNs, which are being procured and distributed, PMI is also continuing to track resistance patterns to insecticides that are used for IRS. And this can provide a comprehensive data set for decision-making. Back in 2006 and 2007, WHO vector control staff evaluated some trials of IRS that were conducted in Nigeria and concluded that IRS is feasible and could be scaled up. And in 2011, PMI started its collaboration with the NMCP and other partners, conducted a 2-year Irs training program, including technical, strategic, managerial, and operational support. And this training program was part of an overall capacity building process with the ultimate goal of transferring the IRS skills and activities to the local governments. Between that time and now, there have been some attempts at conducting IRS using donor funds, private sector funds, government funds, but IRS has not been widely implemented in the last decade. So in addition to the strategic limitations of where IRS is an appropriate intervention, it's also a relatively costly intervention.
Why did you do like this?
Sorry, I think I got muted. Can you hear me still? Okay, it's a costly intervention. So in efforts to obtain universal vector control coverage, once PMI withdrew the direct IRS spraying operations, the focus really shifted to enhancing entomologic and insecticide resistance monitoring and to fill those ITN coverage gaps. And despite PMI Nigeria's budget increasing over the years, the population and geographic scope for the ITN coverage has also increased. PMI now supports 11 states with about 66 million people. So while there is this shift on optimizing ITN coverage, the impact of the funding constraints is such that the net campaigns are often not able to meet that every 3-year cadence that's recommended by the WHO. So looping back to the question, how do we balance IRS alongside other vector control interventions? As mentioned previously, we need multiple pieces of data. We need data on capacity and available resources. We need data on the vector in all areas of the country, insecticide resistance profiles and biting behaviors for and insecticides that are used on ITNs and in IRS. We need data on malaria burden and epidemiology. We need to know the seasonality of transmission so we can identify areas that might be suited for one intervention or another. And we need data on the community, surveys of the housing structures to determine if they're suitable for spraying, surveys on net use and care, and surveys on social acceptance so that we can best cater the social and behavioral communication. So really the balance comes with making the really tough decisions on ensuring universal vector control coverage with an optimal intervention in a given area. While malaria epidemiology and vector profiles may indicate that some areas could be prioritized for IRS, the reality is that budgets would really need to be examined because a shift to IRS could likely lead to non-coverage in some areas by any vector control method. So therefore, additional funding resources would need to be maintained at the current level so that the current level of vector control coverage can be met. And these levels are currently not sufficient, let alone adding the expense of IRS activities in an impactful and sustainable manner. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. I hear you. So I have a couple of questions and I will come back. You touched on something that Linda also said about optimizing what we currently are doing in the country before we move to the next phase. So I will come to that in terms of questions for you guys. So I'll move on to the next speaker right now. Samuel from Anglo Gold Ashanti. Samuel, Anglo Gold Ashanti has successfully implemented an integrated malaria control program in Ghana for years. And IRS is a big component of your intervention. What would you say is the business case for IRS and malaria in general from a private sector perspective?
Thank you, Chigo, for this opportunity, sharing our experience from Anglo Gold Ashanti perspective. Let me say it all began in 2005 when Anglo Gold Ashanti, which is currently the third largest gold mining company in the world, did identify malaria as the biggest public health threat to its operation in sub-Saharan Africa. The mine has a hospital, and as at that time, we were recording over 6,800 malaria cases per month, out of which 2,500 were workers from the mines. And then on an average, 3 working days are taken off each time someone gets or comes down with malaria, and that per month. The slow work rates during recuperation also led to low productivity at the workplace. And the cost of malaria medication for treatment alone by workers was hovering around $55,000 annually. Again, we also recognize that in Obuasi Municipal Hospital, recorded over 12,000 malaria cases per month, and 48% of all cases seen at the hospital and other clinics in and around Obuasi was attributed to malaria. And again, 22% of death cases in the hospitals were attributed to malaria. So this burden, seeing the effect of malaria, led to the launching of a program in April 2006 that looked at an integrated malaria control program using Irs as a significant vector control intervention to overcome this burden. Anglo-Gold Ashanti commissioned this malaria control program at an initial cost of $1.7 million US, and subsequently kept on adding some other resources to it. The program coverage was to look at not just workers, but around about 50 communities around the mining area. And the focus workers, but vulnerable subpopulations such as pregnant women and children under 5. And in the first 2 years, it was targeted that we should be able to reduce malaria cases by 50%. Hopefully, at the end of the initiative, by 74%. And we also did acknowledge that school attendance had improved and workforce productivity has also improved. Workforce absenteeism due to malaria has also significantly reduced. So with all these other benefits, let me fast forward to 2020. Malaria cases for workers has reduced from the initial 2,500 to averagely only 3 people per month. And malaria prevalence in Obuasi Municipal and Obuasi East District is currently hovering around 4%, as per the last Sentinel survey that we had in 2020. The program is currently operating in 16 districts in Ghana and is receiving funding support also from the Global Fund, in addition to what Anglo-Gold Ashanti is investing into this intervention. And due to our business approach to operation, maximizing our returns and improving cost efficiency, the program has been really successful and currently rated as A1 by the Global Fund, according to our last performance letter. Anglo-Gold Ashanti has received many recognition and award to this investment made in malaria, and therefore we would encourage other bodies to invest in malaria elimination, as it proves to provide a lot of benefits, not only for the business, but for national development. An investment into malaria elimination program as a corporate social responsibility provides or proves to be a winning investment for the corporate business. The employees will benefit, customers, your customers would also benefit, and your host communities are likely to also benefit from it. Employees and their families are healthier, resulting in increased productivity and decreasing absenteeism from work. And it also improves school attendance and academic performance, leading to a general development of the economy. Malaria is a major health and economic burden for sub-Saharan Africa, and therefore investing into malaria elimination intervention is recognized as an important element of national poverty eradication intervention with huge benefits to both the social and business communities. So looking at the benefit, an investment in malaria elimination program therefore has positive impact on health and productivity of workforce, their families, and the communities in which the business is located or operates from. Return on investment is very good, and definitely there's an increased profitability as you also reduce your costs in healthcare. You are able to create more jobs as you engage people in IRS, thereby beside your company providing jobs for the less privileged people, you're able to recruit and engage many more people into malaria intervention. So you create more jobs. And that enhances your credibility and reputational capital in the community, not only just in the community, but nationally and internationally. So an investment in malaria is good, and the company needs to recognize first and foremost the enormous benefits that it provides the company, and not just the company, but the community and the nation in which you operate as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. Investments in malaria intervention proves to be a win-win for everyone, to the businesses, to the community, and to everyone in general. That is the message. And I hope that everyone in the room is hearing us. This AngloGold is, I would say, one of the pace setters in terms of IRS implementation in the world. So they are a voice to be reckoned with. Thank you, Samuel, for that remark. So I'll move on to our last speaker for this session, Justin from Bayer. Justin, Bayer is fully invested in vector control. Please tell us about your Bayer's new innovation for IRS programming.
Thank you, Chuku.
Over to you, Justin.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me clearly. I guess
I
have the benefit. I have the benefit of being at the end and reflecting on some of the comments which have been made by panelists before, but I have the disadvantage of inheriting any time gaps which might have followed. So I think rather than talk about our specific innovations, I wanted to talk a little bit more generally about innovative products for IRS. And maybe talk more about innovation is spurred by a need. And the need obviously can be different in different situations, but our approach to our resource investment and development in indoor residual spraying really focuses on the elements of obviously the ongoing need of resistance management, which have been in place for some years, and that's not just us, but other organizations as well, other companies as well. Also making sure that needs of residual activity are also taken into account in IRS products, and that they're also suiting local needs. And obviously, quality and safety is part of that, and that's one of the reasons why the PQ system exists, obviously, to make sure that the elements of quality, safety, and efficacy are well assessed, and there's a good benchmark for that. We've recently introduced a product, Fluidor Fusion, which is a dual AI or two mode of action product, which I guess matches Dr. Perpetua's earlier comments about interest in looking at dual AI technologies as part of the vector control strategy. But there's obviously importance of rotating such products with other products which are available as well. There's new modes of action which come with Fluidor Fusion. There's new modes of action which has also been introduced by other companies like Sumitomo with their product SumiShield. And there's other innovations coming in the next few years in the IRS area with other modes of action. I think, I don't know, a suggestion or maybe a highlight is that I think it's probably as a consideration of introducing IRS in a highly stratified, or looking at a sort of stratification plan and a high burden, a high impact area. Now the next few years, there's certainly going to be a range of IRS options which are basically never sort of had it so good, if you like, in terms of the range of IRS options which address the needs of resistance management, which serve the needs of longer residual activity, and a range of options which are available for rotation, including dual AI products such as Fluidor Fusion from ourselves. The only thing I was just going to add, and I'll keep it relatively short, but I think was it Linda or somebody mentioned about this elements of distribution. I think Philip also talked about in areas where you have states or funding which is not supporting certain states, and the idea of pursuing private sector support or private sector funding in some of those states. This element of distribution is obviously a key one for IRS as well. It's somewhat easier to do IRS supply when you have a sort of centralized procurement. But if you're going to be going into more fragmented distribution or more fragmented IRS implementation, then obviously the supply chain needs to be innovative as well as the product. So maybe I'll leave it there in terms of just some thoughts to add to the discussion. I'm conscious of the time of Chuku, but basically the key message I think is that never had it so good in terms of ability to measure or manage resistance, where IRS makes sense, complementing other interventions. And you know, it's going to continue to look good in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you. That was succinct and clear message to us. So at this point, we will turn over to the Q&A session. And we already have a number of questions from the audience. We will take as much as time would allow before we dive into the next session. So I would love for all the panelists on this session to turn on their video. I think it's good for us to see you so we can, you know, have a good interaction. So my first question will go to Dr. Linda, and I may also need Philip to respond to it as well. Dr. Linda, you mentioned that the major intervention right now in Nigeria is usage of bed nets. And it's important for us to achieve a good coverage or maximum coverage because right now we are not where we want to be in terms of coverage of LLIN. And to be important for us to achieve a maximum coverage. And then before thinking, maybe I didn't get that clear, before thinking of including another intervention like Irs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard that correctly. So, and now in the new strategy, we have Irs as part of the components. And in the stratification, I think there's a component of Irs as well. At what stage do we not dive into integration of LLIN and Irs and other components? We would like to know. And where you have, in communities where you have, the incidence is very high burden, how do we bring it down drastically? Because from what I know, from my knowledge of malaria, I know one tool, one intervention cannot get us the results we are trying to achieve. An integrated method is very important. So at what stage do we now integrate all this? And what do we do for areas that are high burden? What is your recommendation and what is your advice? Over to you, Dr. Linda. I know it's all over the place, but I'm sure you get the message.
All right, thank you very much, Achuko, for that. In fact, I like your concluding remarks. And yes, okay, for lack of choice of word, I'll borrow yours, integrated interventions. But what we are looking at is a combination of interventions that work. So malaria control, as we know, there's no magic wand to malaria control or elimination. It has to be through a combination of proven interventions that work. And when we say that you do not jump, I mean, using your words this time, you do not jump into using IRS for the sake of using IRS. So there are very clear criteria for the use of IRS. But for a community deployment of IRS, for instance, you have to ensure that you have the majority of the vector population feeds and rests inside the house. You have to make sure that the vectors are susceptible to the insecticide that is being deployed. You have to make sure that people sleep indoors at night. You have to make sure that the transmission pattern is such that the population can be protected by 1 or 2 rounds of IRS per year. And you have to make sure that the capacity and resources are there to continue the deployment of IRS. And so looking at some of these criteria, and you have to ensure also that most of the structures, the housing structures, are structures that are sprayable, structures that you can spray. And so the WHO is not saying that you cannot use IRS. There are instances where you can combine IRS and LLIN, like where there's very high, I mean, the one you mentioned, where you have very high transmission and you want to force, bring it down to a level where you maintain it, you can use IRS. But where you have not achieved universal coverage with ITNs, delving into IRS will not give you additional, reduce your vector capacity, because if the insecticide in your ITNs are effective and they are being used, so the key word here is utilization, the use of the ITNs. If the ITNs are used and the insecticides are working, when Melissa was talking, she mentioned the identification of the PBOs, I mean, the different types of insecticides that are on the nets. You have the pyrethroid only, the PBOs, and the other, the new generation nets and all. So once the insecticides are working in that environment and you have not achieved maximum use of the bed nets, adding IRS will not give you, so you cannot jump from ground 0 to ground 10 or to ground 100 by simply adding IRS to the bouquet. So IRS needs to be used in areas, and this is why the stratification exercise was able to identify clearly areas within the country where you can deploy IRS. If I recall, the national strategy is also emphasizing on deploying IRS within 20% of, you know, the structures that are sprayable. And so this is identifying areas, like I mentioned, the urban cities where you have the rich who may not sleep inside the LLINs, but they have houses that are sprayable. That could be an area, but you are not introducing it alongside LLIN. You are doing IRS in this part of the country while you're deploying LLIN in the other side. This becomes very critical, especially for countries like Nigeria, where resource remains an issue. And remember what I said, in prioritization, in resource prioritization, you have to analyze, use a context-specific data to drive your interventions for maximum impact. I'm sure Philip will be able to add to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip, do you want to add to that quickly?
I think Dr. Linda has aptly captured. Okay.
Okay. All right. So okay. Go ahead. No, I thought you were speaking. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Dr. Linda has aptly captured a lot of things using evidence and the information that are available. I was going to say the key at the end of the day is let's look at what our stratification document is saying. And there's a session that is coming up that we address that so that we don't overflog issues. Maybe by the time we listen to that and we see how we can optimize the results of the stratification exercise that was conducted, it will help us gain more insight into what we are trying to achieve at this point. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe one or two questions before we wrap up this session. Samuel, you talked about the ability for AngloGo to sustain your IRS intervention for so many years. And I'm hearing some of the concerns regarding IRS and maybe integration of LLIN and LSM and IRS it's as a result of funding. I think that's one of the biggest components, challenge that we have. How have you been able to sustain your IRS program over the years? What is the trick? What have you done that is working that we can learn from?
Thank you. I think the bottom line for us has been knowing the enormous benefits that we get if we are able to really, really push malaria very low. And with all these intervention mix that we talk about, the bottom line for me, I see, is the resources and being able to sustain it. I remember AngloGo at a point in time in Obuasi for 3 years shut down the mines. And yet they were able to take money from their stock of profit they've made over the years to continue to invest into this. The bottom line that we should all recognize is that it's not just for the corporate body, but it's for the entire community. It's for the entire country. And the earlier the businesses recognize that we have to push malaria down now, the better for us. We can't leave this to the next generation. We can't leave this to 50 years to come. The more we delay the progress, the more resistance we have, because the insect
Hello, Samuel. Hello, Samuel. I hope you can hear me. So your network is breaking really bad. So yeah, let me just, I hope you can hear me. Hello, Samuel. So I think we hear your message. We hear your message. Understanding the benefits of IRS is very important.
Using the similar insecticides, and that helps introduce resistance. So there's a whole lot.
Thank you so much, Samuel. I think we got the crust of his message, which is understanding the benefits and investing, in it.
Yes.
People will say where
yes,
your treasure lies, your heart will lie there as well, or you invest in where your treasure lies. So if we really feel that this is important for the country, all sectors will come together to move it forward. That is the message from his end. Melissa, one final question before we move on to the next panel. You talked about IRS implementation that had been done by PMI sometime in Nigeria. And did you mention LSM as well? Did I hear you mention LSM?
No, I did not mention LSM, but it has been pretty minimal.
Okay. So for IRS, what are the lessons from PMI's view? What did you learn? Like, what were the challenges from your end? And what do you think we need to do better if we are to incorporate that into strategies moving forward? And, so we can do better because you've done it before and you've seen what works and what did not work. So what can we do to improve on it moving forward? Quickly.
Yep. So during that 2-year, sort of training pilot many years back, there was very significant capacity building that occurred during that time. And so the skills and knowledge were able to be transferred to, in-country partners with the goal of having them sort of be able to take on the activities. And so as we've talked about, right, the investments are significant, but the capacity and the knowledge can be transferred and can be harnessed by those in country who could take it on. So I think the lesson that we learned is that there is an ability to train and build internal capacity. It's a matter of making sure that IRS implementation is able to be done financially, as well as able to be properly sustained. Over.
Thank you. So we've had a very...
Before you finish, I know we panelists are not able to even, there's no provision for us to put questions on the chat as well or make comments, I noticed.
Oh, there is. Yeah, you can comment.
Yeah, I went to the question and answer, but I didn't see where to comment.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Matt, for your contribution.
Sorry, yeah. So I just want to thank all members of the panel for this very insightful discussion. But, going back to, I don't know if Samuel is still there, I say do. I wanted to actually ask him, what did they factor in deciding to opt for IRS, use rather than LLIs in that community? I didn't hear him mention that. Maybe I missed it. Of course, obviously, everyone has talked about the issue of sustainability and sustenance in terms of resources. But we all agree at the same time that IRS is a very impactful intervention, we all know. And countries like Zambia have used it to drastically bring back the burden of malaria in some regions in the country. And, are actually moving towards elimination in those regions of the country. So countries like Zambia have combined it with ITNs to bring them to the level where they are, a lot of impact, and a drastic reduction in their burden. So we know that IRS is very impactful, but of course, obviously, you have to look at the resources that are available for the country to do that. And then, so I also wanted to ask Samuel, what was the coverage of ITN used in the area, compared to before they opted for IRS? Because I understand what Linda is saying, and I do agree, because the issue with ITN is it's not even the coverage as much as the use. And we all know that no matter what you do, and even when you deploy ITNs, the utilization is always a key issue for many of the population that you deploy it to. So, and then to bring down the burden in some targeted areas drastically, where you have high burdened population, and you need to, you can then bring in IRS, even if it's for, for a short time, just to bring down the burden. That has been tried in many countries and it has worked. And I don't see why we cannot do it also in Nigeria. So, I think it's something that we don't just say it's not either or. It's not always, it's either LLINs or IRS, But even when if you have consistently low coverage of ITN usage utilization, even when you are giving them the nets and they're not using it, and you consistently have high burden in that particular region or area, there is a sense in introducing another tool to bring down the burden. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Perpetual. I think that pretty sums up what we've been trying to address. IRS is good, it's very impactful. We need to integrate it into our strategies moving forward for Nigeria. We need to also think about sustainability, and that's your question to Anglo Gold. What did they see? Why did they actually factor that into their intervention? And then what were the cases of usage of ITN in that region? Samuel, just quickly, 1 minute, please. Can you respond? And we can get more responses from you post the meeting via email and send it to the NMEP. And also we can definitely get another session, following up from this, and to actually dive deeper into the discussion. So can you just give us a 1 minute response to our questions? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. We realized that bed nets were available and its usage was pretty low. We had an integrated approach to this intervention. So we did not rule out bed net completely. However, we also did recognize that as long as you're able to convince the householder and you deposit the right quantity of insecticide on the wall, it's going to remain there for 9 months as we have the chemicals or the insecticide coming from the manufacturers. So that had less influence of human behavior. As long as they admit you once into their homes and you have a good rapport with them, every year they are going to allow you, and you do IRS just once. The rest, as long as they don't touch the walls and scrape it up or paint the wall, is going to be there, and that is much more sustainable than the bed net. Bed net is good. However, they have to consistently sleep and direct every night. And again, the mosquito behavior also does affect it. And some even not using it well also would affect its outcome. So yeah, a couple of things that we took into consideration, and we did not just drop bed net completely, but we added it as a supplementary to the main IRS, and we would encourage others to do as well. We also did larval source management, and again, that also really did help. And we keep on studying the behavior of the mosquitoes and ensuring that we are really up to date with data from the field. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you to all our speakers for this engaging session. We will, we're supposed to take a short break for a video, but we won't do that because we don't have time. So we will dive into the next session ASAP. The next session, it's going to be looking at improving the impact of LLIN and integration of vector control tools. Joining me in this session includes Dr. Tom McLean, is a director of Assess Market IVCC. We have Patrick Sayers, head of global growth, Vestergaard. We have Dr. Perpetual Ihomobi. She's a national coordinator and she has been speaking. Dr. Perpetual, we welcome you to this panel. We have Dr. Adeogun Adedapo from Nigeria Institute of Medical Research. And then we have Kalat Musa, is a deputy director of Food and Drug Information Center, NAFDAC. So we welcome this new panelists, and then the other ones, please kindly mute your line and also turn off your video. Thank you. So I will start the conversation with Kalat. NAFDAC is the regulatory body in Nigeria for a number of products. What is the current regulatory framework for vector control tools in Nigeria? What are the gains, challenges, and the way forward? We would like to know. Kalat, over to you.
Okay. Am I on?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, good. Good. So fine. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in this discussion. I hope I'm audible now because earlier I was inaudible. So you're all welcome. Okay, good. So 5 minutes. I don't know if I can justify all that you expect to hear in 5 minutes, but I'll just do my best. So let me start. Of course, NAFDAC, is created by an act of law. Okay, where the regulatory body are responsible for controlling and regulating the manufacture, importation, exportation, advertisement, sale, distribution, and use of regulated products. And one of those products happens to be pesticides, which, of course, the product in question is under. So what's the current situation? To ensure effective control and availability of vector control and other essential regulated products for use, NAFDAC has taken the underlisted steps to ensure speedy product approvals. Number one, automation of the registration process through an online website, that's NAPAMS. Number two, implementation of the quality management system with clearly defined SOPs, that's standard operating procedures, and timelines. Three, transparency in the regulation by publishing relevant information and guidelines online for access by prospective applicants. Four, risk categorization of manufacturers prior to site inspection. Then five, risk-based sampling of products for laboratory evaluation. Current status as well, we're talking about now the directorates that are directly responsible for regulation and registration. That's providing marketing authorization eventually. We have the veterinary, Directorate of Veterinary Medicines and Allied Products. That's the directly responsible for vector control tools. Then the registration arm also for issuance of marketing authorization and document review. We have the laboratories and the post-marketing surveillance directorate for surveillance after, of course, issuance of post-marketing authorization. Then we have like 10 categories of products that fall under vector control. But the most popular ones, of course, and I heard panelists talking about them repeatedly. So the insecticide treated nets, we have about 15 registered brands. Then we have the Indo residual spray IRS, 64 registered brands. Then based on priority, okay, I said 64 registered. Then we have the mosquito repellents, which has about 40 registered mosquito repellent like coils and all that. We have about 40. And of course, there are an array of other products that are not really populated. Except I heard somebody speaking about the impregnated walls, insecticide impregnated wall paint. I think we just have one product in that category registered here in Nigeria. So maybe we may need to look into that. And okay, so the process of registration involves submission of application. I wouldn't go so much into that. You submit the application, then followed by document screening and verification. The third stage is document vetting and processing. Then, of course, there are timelines, like for document screening and verification. It takes a period of not less than 2 weeks. Then vetting and processing also 2 weeks. Then facility audit. After that, we go for facility audit. Then subsequently, laboratory evaluation. After facility audit, then of course, approval meetings. That's when, of course, you have a satisfactory outcome with respect to the facility audit and of course with the laboratory evaluation. So both results are compared in the approval meetings to grant approval for either registering or to decline registration. So where the agency is satisfied with the application for registration, the product shall be issued with a certificate of registration valid for 5 years. On the contrary, if the application process is unsatisfactory, the applicant is informed with reasons in writing. What are the gains? That's so much for application, but the gains now, what gains have we recorded? Basically, vector-borne diseases such as malaria, dengue fever, leishmaniasis, filariasis, a huge burden. Therefore, ensuring availability of quality and safe vector control products reduces, we're looking at the gains in terms of reduction in mobility, mortality, downtimes, reduction in debility, and of course, it eases pressure in healthcare facilities worldwide. So what are the challenges we've seen? So far, we've seen challenges in terms of distribution. We have inadequate distribution channels because most of the insecticide-treated nets and other products, particularly the long-lasting insecticide-treated nets, are mostly found on the streets being sold. And what we usually understand is most of these things are produced for program partners and all that, and mostly they are produced for distribution without being sold. But even yesterday on the traffic, I think I saw a couple of hawkers hawking those products. So we feel the distribution channel should be more, I think if we share information, collaborate more effectively, that will be tackled. Then of course, capacity building, capacity in terms of laboratory equipments. Then of also the technical capacity. Also, I think the agency might need input in terms of technical capacity and otherwise. Then developing competencies, both scientific and enforcement. We feel we need support in terms of enforcement. We need logistic support and all that. Then equipment, of course, laboratory equipments are lacking, and poor understanding of the application by end users is also seen as a challenge. Then what are the ways forward? Timely issuance of marketing authorization of vector control is considered as a way forward. Availability of safe, quality, and efficacious vector control products. Post-marketing surveillance of available vector control products in circulation. It's something that should be looked into. Information sharing, between stakeholders and program partners. Then, of course, update on latest scientific evidence-based regulatory capacity. And I think all those will eventually lead to elimination of vector-borne diseases. Also, as way forward, we suggesting or we're looking into simultaneous development of different vector control products, targeting various developmental stages of vector. Then deployment of track and trace technology to checkmate diversion. I think with that, with that, I'm good.
Thank you, Kala. Thank you so much. That was elaborate indeed. So still on the same issue on regulation, we would like to hear from a private sector perspective on regulation. So I want to turn my next question to Patrick from Vestergaard. Can you share with us from a private sector perspective, the regulatory framework for vector control tools in Nigeria? I know you've dealt with these people, you've engaged with them on a number of fronts. So let us know from your views how your experience has been so far.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you for acknowledging the private sector perspective. I'm delighted to offer some insights here. Now, not all countries have a strong regulatory approval system for vector control tools. And however, Nigeria should be commended for establishing a systematic product registration and traceability implementation strategy, as was just mentioned, in line with the national strategy published by the Federal Ministry of Health in May 2020. The cornerstones of malaria prevention, vector control in the form of LLINs and IRS remain vital. Given the resource limitations that have been mentioned on the call today, it's essential that investments in the most cost-effective tools be prioritized to actually maximize impact. And we should be encouraged now to see that the vector control toolbox is expanding with a focus on addressing the rapid spread of insecticide resistance. Now, this development presents numerous opportunities for the regulatory framework for vector control tools in Nigeria. And very recently, a revised ITN classification has been developed by the WHO MPAC, the Malaria Policy Advisory Committee, that factors in product efficacy claims. And there are now 3 LLIN classes, and I thought it was fair to mention those here. The first class are ITNs designed to kill insecticide-susceptible mosquitoes. The second class being those ITNs that are designed to kill insecticide-resistant mosquitoes. And here, this class would include the pyrethroid PBO nets, and in future would be expanded to also include pyrethroid plus chlorphenapir nets. And then the last class are ITNs designed to sterilize and or reduce the fecundity or the fertility of insecticide-resistant mosquitoes. Now, we should all welcome this new classification, as it means that bed nets will, in the future, be deployed based on their efficacy claims, where they can have the most impact. Now, these developments present opportunities for a strong regulatory framework, such as Nigeria's, to help the program understand a product's efficacy claims, and indeed where and when to deploy the products by taking those efficacy claims of each LLIN product into account when actually reviewing and authorizing those products. And secondly, to contribute to closing existing data gaps on new types of nets. And let me expand here on the new types of nets, because as PBO LLINs, and they were mentioned by previous panelists, are new, there's still a lot to be understood as to how the various nets perform in real conditions of use and in various contexts and over the intended product's lifetime. And I think Nigeria here is in a unique position to help generate this local data, this local evidence that was mentioned, as there's widespread resistance to pyrethroids in the country. And thanks, of course, also to the high level of expertise in entomology at NIMA. So plainly put, there's an opportunity to create a link here between post-market surveillance activities and the regulatory approval process. And this link would constitute a feedback loop, providing regulatory authorities with information about product performance as part of regular reporting requirements. Here I'd like to introduce a third opportunity, which I think also elevates the need for this post-market surveillance activity and the establishment of this link between the activities and the actual regulatory framework. And the first important point to consider here is that the quality of vector control product really does matter. Bed nets are recognized as being the most cost-effective tool in the fight against malaria, and they're instrumental to the success of the WHO's 2030 strategic malaria target. And to ensure that the global community is still on track to achieve those goals, it's essential that the quality of LLINs is guaranteed. And I think we can all acknowledge that quality really does matter. And there's a growing consensus about the need for higher and consistent quality management standards in the manufacturing of LLINs to ensure greater adherence to the WHO pre-qualification specifications. And in a recent report from the Global Fund Office of the Inspector General on the supply of 52 million substandard LLINs from a supplier, the Global Fund acknowledged that the supplier did not control the manufacturing processes of its nets, resulting in some substandard products being supplied in Africa. The Global Fund also acknowledged that its quality control mechanisms were inadequate to identify substandard nets. But honestly, we really must applaud the work of the Global Fund's Office of the Inspector General for its candid and thorough assessment of the gaps in the quality inspection systems. We support the assessment that there is need for more comprehensive testing and sampling of finished nets at pre-shipment level. And the second point to consider here is the need for an end-to-end quality monitoring framework. Such a framework does not only ensure quality assured products reach the population, but it ensures that products continue to perform as intended over the life of the net. And I believe country regulatory framework can play a vital role in its adoption. Now, I think, as I reflect on this, that in the case of pyrethroid PBO nets, it's even more important than ever to evaluate the performance of these nets in the field through a systematic post-market surveillance program. And this is because manufacturers have taken different approaches to incorporating PBO synergists into net materials, leading to great variability in the initial PBO concentration of the different nets. The ability to release and retain PBO in the product, despite various factors of loss throughout its lifetime, is key to ensuring effective protection. And the issue is that there's currently no long-term field studies confirming insecticidal activity of low-content PBO nets. And in such a situation, post-market surveillance activities can play a critical role to close the evidence gap and inform procurement and deployment decisions. So we actually advocate for more thorough control and long-term monitoring of bed nets by donors, by procurement agents and country regulatory bodies. So yeah, manufacturers have a responsibility to deliver good quality nets. It's a given. In addition, donors funding the nets and buyers procuring them and endemic countries deploying them, they all need to play their part to hold manufacturers accountable to deliver nets that meet quality requirements. Vestergaard's pledge to quality is a commitment to save more lives. We rely heavily on data-driven evidence in the lab and in the field, and we take all possible steps to ensure bed nets we manufacture are safe, efficacious, and are of high quality. And frankly speaking, we're encouraged by some of the many, many initiatives NMEP and NAFDAC have taken, and jointly we commit to helping raise industry standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. You mentioned a lot of things, and I know your point was still focused on quality, and raising our standard is very important for us to have the impact that we're looking for as a country. So that will bring me to my next question, which goes to Adidapo from NIMA. I know you understand the importance of quality, and Patrick mentioned post-marketing surveillance, which is key. So my question to you is, how do we improve the post-shipment inspection of LLIN in Nigeria? And what does good look like in terms of, trying to get this done? What are we actually trying to achieve? What is the good when you get this done? How do you know you've gotten it done? That's the question, and then what is the role of research in this? I know you work with NIMA, one of the brilliant research institutes in Nigeria. Can you tell us more about this? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. I think a lot of things has been said, quite all right. A whole lot of things has been said about LLINs here. But I think I would like to start from the back to the front. Now, the role of research in all of this. Research is central to everything. We are talking today about evidence-based research, evidence-based intervention in Nigeria because of research work that has been conducted by a lot of scientists, because we have information. Here in NIMA, we work with practically everybody, from the regulatory authorities like NAFDAC, to our parent organization like the National Malaria Elimination Program. Work closely with the National Malaria Elimination Program, to our partners like PMI, like Vestergaard, we work with practically everybody. So, and all we do, because our mandate is to conduct research into diseases of public health in Nigeria. So all we do is to conduct research and make recommendations. Now, coming back from that now, for LLIN, I heard us talking about, I just want to give us a little information. I heard us talking about indoor residual spray. we're considering IRS, we've been discussing that. But our recent data, some of our recent data shows us that mosquitoes are biting indoor at the same rate at which they are biting outdoor in some parts of the country. So what do we do? Where do we go? That is an indicator of something, and something we need to take seriously. That is an indicator. That is one. So coming back to long-lasting insecticide nets, you know, we know our major intervention here in the country is the distribution and use of long-lasting insecticide nets. And we just don't distribute these nets anyhow. We just don't get nets and distribute them. We work with data. For a few years now, we've been gathering data with the National Malaria Elimination Program, through the Global Fund, and through PMI, through everybody, through our partners from different parts of the country. We've been gathering data on the susceptibility status of these mosquitoes, whether pre and post LLIN distribution. And of course, is one of the reasons why we're talking about widespread distribution of vector resistance in Nigeria today. And that is what is also informing the policy decisions that are being made by the National Malaria Elimination Program. So our net procurement is based on the evidence that we are getting from the field, which is from data that we are able to get on insecticide resistance. That is for that. So as for LLINs, specifically to your question now, as for LLINs, we all know once these LLINs are shipped from the manufacturers down to the country, some checks are being done at that level before they are shipped, pre-shipment checks. But by the time it comes to Nigeria, of course, there are some basic things that has to be looked at. And they can be divided into three: the physical, the chemical, and then the bioefficacy properties of these nets. If a particular net does not pass any of those three, then we have a problem. Now, let's start with the physical. For the physical properties of the net, there are standards for each net. There are some kind of things that we have to look at. One of such is the weight of the net, which is a function of quite a number of things: the materials it is made of, and then the insecticide, quantity of insecticide that is present in the net. Now, we also have to look at some properties like holes on the net. If there are holes above 0.0, 0.5 by 0.5 centimeter, once they are wide, insecticide-resistant mosquitoes can penetrate. Now, the third thing that has to be looked at is the dimension of the net, the size of the net. Is it smaller than the standard? Or is it that after washing, the net stretch out completely and then it loses its integrity? Now, as for that, of course, all those things can be looked at. We look at all those things. And then, you know, at the seams also, whether the net, whether there has been holes or loose, this could be mechanical faults of the net, but they contribute to what happens on the field. When you are distributing such nets to communities, a net that already has several holes on it, of course, it may have high insecticide content, but by the time you wash it once or twice, it loses the level of insecticide content that is in the net, and then mosquitoes will start coming in, especially resistant mosquitoes. So coming down to the chemical content of the mosquitoes, or properties of the LLINs. Now, for the properties of the LLINs, we monitor quite a number of things. Now, for the chemical properties, take for instance, after conducting susceptibility tests in some areas, you get data that the mosquitoes are highly resistant to insecticide, and the mechanism of resistance is metabolic. And you are bringing in PBU nets. And you realize along the line that after washing the net just twice or three times, the net has actually lost its PBO properties, which is the basic reason why you even purchase that net in the first instance. You wash it like 10 times, and the quantity of PBO inside the net drops significantly. Then we have a problem, which means that even while we are purchasing this net, we have to look at different types of LLINs. And then we look at the available information, or we conduct our research and get our data to know which net to even purchase. That is the second part. Yes, for the third part now, which has to do with bioefficacy of this net. You know, the WHO says that the knockdown of the net at baseline must be greater than or equal to 95%. And then as you proceed, as you watch the net, it must be greater than or equal to 80%. While the same thing goes for the at the end of the day, when you look at all this, if this is not met using research, then we have a problem. We have a big challenge. So these are some of the things that we need to look at. So,
thank you so much, Dapo. Thank you very much.
Over to you. I think these are the basic things you just have to look at.
Thank you so much. That was very well spelled out. Now we know some of the indicators that we look out for in terms of post shipments in Nigeria. For my next question, I will direct that to Tom. Now, we've been talking about vector control tools and different form of vector controls. We need to understand evolution of vector control tools and the new innovation in that space. I think that would be helpful. And with your role at IVCC, I'm sure you will have a lot to say on that. So please, Tom, can you share with us a new innovation around the space of vector control that would help us to improve on the work that we're doing right now? Thank you.
So thank you very much. And thank you also to the other speakers that we've heard from this afternoon, and particularly from the speakers from the National Malaria Elimination Program and from the local institutes and regulatory bodies. It's been very interesting to hear from you. And a number of themes have been running through this discussion that are in fact informing the evolution of innovation and changes in products. And I'm thinking particularly here about the widespread recognition that vector control, particularly vector control with insecticide products, has been the dominant contribution to the reduction of malaria incidence throughout Africa and indeed in Nigeria. And that has been based on a number of chemicals that were invented now some 40 or 50 years ago, which were the pyrethroid chemicals. And those were, at the time, when they were first invented, considered to be impossibly expensive, and nobody could imagine using them in large quantities. But over time, the development of the processes around those chemicals and the scale up in many countries manufacturing them, and the increase in the number of contributors to those products brought down the prices, made them very widely available. They're very safe, very effective chemicals that you're all very familiar with from their use in the first generations of long-lasting insecticide-treated nets. But they have one problem, and that is a problem that is common to all kinds of chemical or drug interventions, which is that if you use the same thing on its own over and over again, there will be resistance. This is not avoidable if you always use the same chemical. We see it in drugs. We understand it from antibiotic resistance, where there is the same chemicals produce resistance. We see it in insecticide resistance in crop products. So it was inevitable that if we have this very effective deployment of insecticide-treated nets, that insecticide resistance would follow. So we should not be terribly disappointed or surprised that it has come. But fortunately, there has in the intervening period been the development of a number of alternative products. Now, it turns out that it's been easiest to make alternative products for sprays in the first place, because the formulation into nets is more complicated. So in the past 6 or 7 years, there have been a handful of new indoor residual spray products that overcome the pyrethroid resistance. And these are the things that I'm sure you will have heard about from our colleagues in Bayer or Sumitomo, bringing products like Fluorofusion or SumiShield to the marketplace. And there continue to be more varieties of different active ingredients coming through for indoor residual spraying over the next 2 to 3 years. So that within the near future, as well as things that you're probably very familiar with, like the Syngenta product Actelic and the products from Bayer and Sumitomo, there will be products from other manufacturers that enable us to make a wide choice of products for indoor residual spraying in order to rotate them. That will allow us to maintain the effectiveness of indoor residual spray products and to keep that as a sustainable process. And we can see that for indoor residual spraying, that sustainability is now pretty much assured, that it's something that is going to be straightforward to do. In the move over to this new generation of sprays, of course, the costs of the chemicals have gone up, but that is now reversing, and those costs are coming down and will continue to drop over the next few years. Probably not down to the level of the pyrethroids, which were extraordinarily cheap chemicals by the late 1990s and early 2000s, but certainly we can see indoor residual spraying coming down to being an effective choice. And some of the concerns that have been historically correct about indoor residual spraying being not as cost effective, that, whilst it is true today, may not be true in the next few years. It may well be that the costs of indoor residual sprays can come to be really an effective choice. More recently, we have seen similar developments in the formulations for insecticide-treated nets. And this has been very exciting over the last few years. First of all, with the developments, and I think we have to recognize the great contributions here from Vestergaard and from Sumitomo of their innovations in the PBO net field, where they started formulating those nets quite a while before the big problems with insecticide resistance were really broadly recognized. And they've brought products to market where in the right places, a PBO pyrethroid net can be a very effective product. Now, one does have to test the mosquitoes in that area because there are some of the resistance mechanisms that are not overcome by PBO. So you have to check that the PBO net is the right product for that area. And this comes to one of the other themes that has been running through this discussion, which is about stratification and targeting. And I think that we are going to see this as a consistent and very important factor in all of the thinking about vector control in the future, very much led and contributed by great work from within WHO and within malaria control programs. If you ever get a chance to see Noor Abdisalan of WHO talking about their work on stratification, I can really recommend that. It's inspiring work indeed. So what we expect is that rather than for there to be a universal coverage of one product across a whole country or a whole region even, that we expect there to be targeting of specific products that will be appropriately effective to specific areas. And so most recently, we've seen that the PBOs grow in popularity, and there is great demand and very effective demand across a great deal of Africa for PBO-based nets. And that is being followed by nets which are this new class that we call dual active ingredient. And the first two of these is now in production and in pilot trials, and we're working with a number of the malaria control and elimination programs, including the NMEP in Nigeria, to pilot some of these products, in particular, a very interesting product called Interceptor G2 from BASF, one that we have worked on for a number of years with BASF, and they have really invested a long time and effort into bringing that product to market. And pilot trials to understand the effectiveness and cost effectiveness in particular of that product are ongoing at the moment. And the results for those should be available over the next few years. And if they are as effective as we believe they will be, then we think that will be a very important step change in the design of nets, moving towards nets with 2 active ingredients in. Now, I'm sure you're used to the idea of using 2 active ingredients in drugs, in the artemisinin co-therapies, which are now the standard drug treatment. Our expectation is that for nets, the same change will be necessary. We need to move away from using only 1 active ingredient in the net to mixtures in the net, as Justin mentioned in his discussion about mixture IRS early on. And we need that.
Thank you so much, Tom.
So I'll draw a line there, and that's not there. Thank you, Ochukwu.
Thank you, Tom. That was so insightful. And so the last question on this panel goes to Dr. Perpetual. Tom just talked about stratification and targeting, which has been, a key theme of this discussion, and is very important. So can you tell us, how do we maximize the output of stratification results in vector control for accelerated impact in Nigeria?
Yeah, all right, thank you, Ochukwu. So Tom had actually started off what I was going to say anyway, that the importance of certification and targeting to guide, targeting of specific, the importance of certification to guide targeting of specific products to specific areas or regions of the country. In other words, because when we look at the increasing heterogeneity of transmission in the country in terms of malaria, you have, even within a state, for instance, there are areas where you have high burden and areas where you have lower burdens. But with this stratification that we have done with the WHO, we're able to now have intervention mixes that up to the local government LGA level in the country. So you know what intervention works with. It's not universal coverage anymore. It's not one cap fits all anymore. So you know, for instance, in some states, based on, of course, different criteria, some you look at the burden of malaria, some you're looking at the rainfall pattern, some you're looking at the other ecological patterns in the region, different regions. So based on those, we were able to identify a package of interventions that will work for particular regions in the country. So, and this has formed part of our new strategic plan. And that's the outlook we're looking at going forward, to be able to target specific package of interventions for specific states or regions of the country based, based on the some of those criteria that I've mentioned. So for instance, we have also found that even within urban setting, for instance, where we have seen very low usage of airlines. So if you're doing mass campaign, you don't need to distribute airlines to the whole population within a state, because there are urban, semi-urban populations where they are not using the nets. So then in such areas, you need to identify what are the most suitable vector control interventions you would deploy in such cases, rather than LLI or complementary to even LLI, that will be impactful and will help you to bring down to see the results that you want to see at the end of the strategic plan. So we are trying to maximize those, for instance, for LLI, for IRS also, where do we then identify as will be suitable for IRS? Maybe some urban population where net usage is very low. Even when you're giving them nets, then you can then target either IRS or lava source management interventions in those particular populations. So basically, the stratification is helping to guide the program to properly target intervention mixes for targeted populations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Perpetual. I wish we had more time. We are over time, as I see, and we have tons of questions. Like, I think from the look of things, I see the interest in this discussion. So with my permission and recommendation to the NMEP and the partners in the room, can we have a follow-up on this? Can we have a part 2 of this discussion sometime in the year? Please, I hope that is a yes. We will look into it. Yes, I'm seeing thumbs up. Yes, we need to dive deeper into this discussion. I have a billion questions right now, and I don't know where to start. But let's see what we can do. I will give a question. Please, 1 minute if you can address the questions so that we can wrap up quickly. This question is for Kalat. So this question is for Kalat. I'm just trying to bring it up. You talked about many, the post-surveillance of, oh God, it's eluding me right now. Okay, let me go to Vestergaard. I'll come to Kalat's question. There are billions of questions right now, and I'm just trying to filter through. Patrick, we know that Vestergaard is very, has invested so much on parathyroid PBO nets. Tom mentioned that. Can you tell us what has been the uptake and the effect so far in regions where it has been used quickly? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I'm perhaps not the best person to answer that because I really think the proof is in the numbers, but I can certainly cite a couple of examples. We've seen some mass deployments throughout Africa, in particular the first one in Uganda. And that was very seminal, actually, because it was followed up by a very large randomized control trial, which showed a considerable reduction in vector density and a reduction in malaria prevalence and cases. So I think the short answer is there is tremendous interest, as was mentioned by Tom McLean, in deploying PBO nets. We are seeing that they are more and more effective, but it is down to what so many of the panelists have been saying, and that is locally generated data and being able to understand the intervention, prioritization, and stratification work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that submission. This question is for, so let me take this question, came from PMI. For NAFDAC, many agricultural insecticides used by farmers come under different trade names and contribute massively to insecticide resistance in Nigeria. Can NAFDAC or any other agency, what have you done to regulate indiscriminate use of these agricultural products that leads to resistance in Nigeria? Kalat, can you respond briefly to that? Thank you.
What NAFDAC has done to address that problem is to ensure that before any insecticide is actually deployed, there are what we call field trials to ensure that the product is fit for purpose before being deployed, and is actually tested for safety before deployment for use in the general population. That's one thing NAFDAC does. There's also categorization in terms of there's categorization in terms with respect to the class it belongs to, by way of chemical maybe classification, based on toxicity, based on all that, before all is being deployed. And there are quite a number of other things. Of course, the registration process is stringent. We don't just deploy anything without being looked into. So, and of course, there are quite a number of other things which I can't remember, but I hope the little I said could help. But I can give more information maybe in the subsequent meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. So I see that some of the speakers are already addressing the questions via chat. please go ahead and do that because we're actually out of time. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this call, we have a press briefing session post this meeting. So I would like to thank all our speakers for the tremendous contribution, for your insights, for your knowledge, your experience you've shared with us today. It's massive, like what I've learned so far in such a short period of time. Like as I said, and we've agreed, we were going to have a part 2 of this discussion. It's very important. So we can actually get to the nitty-gritty on how to get things done. There are a couple of questions around how is IRS done? A lot of people have no understanding of how it's done. So we will need to have an elaborate session to talk about, to dive deeper into some of these things and get out the key items from it and move forward and probably get the result that we're looking for. So thank you once more. I'll just give a quick commitment and next steps. Before this meeting, we've been talking about what can we do, because we don't just want to have a talk show. We want to get things done and move things done. And one of the areas we've seen in Nigeria as a challenge is in terms of presenting a business case and understanding of what IRS mean, or what this integrated vector management will mean for the country. What will it translate to for the businesses, for the government, and for the society at large? So we want to develop, we're working together with a number of companies, organizations in the room. IVCC is part of that dialogue, PMI, and a host of others. And we welcome more organizations that want to be part of that discussion to see how we can develop a business case for the country and start reaching out to the different sectors for them to understand why we need to get this done and get the needed support that we are seeking for, because we need the support. Sustenance is key. No one sector can do it alone. We need to carry everybody along so we can achieve the results we're looking for. CAMA as an alliance we launched our strategy last year, and a key component of our strategy is the End Malaria project, which is going to look at an integrated intervention that would bring down the burden of malaria in high burden communities in Nigeria. So we are also aligning to what the NMP is trying to do. And we're also factoring the stratification that has been done for Nigeria. And so we want to use this opportunity to call on businesses that are in the room that have not invested, in malaria and wants to. We're calling on you to join us in terms of bringing down the burden of malaria in Nigeria. To significantly reduce the economic burden of malaria in Nigeria, we need interventions that would complement the national efforts, the NMP's efforts. And businesses have a lot of roles to play in terms of your skills and competencies. And we believe that with you, together, we can get the work done. Also, we want to encourage businesses to start looking at the stratification for Nigeria in terms of their implementation from the workplace to communities where they work. I know a number of businesses do a lot of activities, malaria programs. We want you to start looking at those stratification and what is the recommendation, from WHO that would help us to enhance and improve on our programming moving forward. And CAMA is here to actually help you, to guide you and to align your programs with what the NMP is doing. And then, so in terms of regulation, I know Vestergaard said a number of things, and they pledge. Patrick said we pledge, and we're advocating for quality control of bed nets all over globally. So at NMP, I just want you to know that your business is in the room. I'm also want to speak to NIMA and NAFDAC, because you all are part of the regulatory framework for Nigeria. We want the best for the country. And so there are businesses in the room that are willing to support you to bridge the gap, and whatever challenges you have, they are here to support you, bring the competencies and the skills to ensure that we have the desired structure that we want for the country moving forward to get our outcome results that we're seeking for. So in a nutshell, that will be the next steps. We'll be reaching out to a number of participants. I'll be reaching out to a number of the companies and organizations that are key to moving this forward. And we will move some of this, as we post the meeting, and we're going to have another meeting sometime in the year to actually evaluate where we are and what we need to do moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, can I just say one last word, Ochukwu? So, just permit me. Thank you so much. So I really liked what you said about businesses, calling on businesses to support the National Malaria Program in the effort towards elimination. We are happy to say that recently the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas signed an MOU with the US government, USAID, towards elimination of malaria in Bonny Island. And so they've set a target of 3 years for that. And we were very happy about that. And we are working with them to ensure that happens. And we are able to achieve that in the next 3 years to eliminate malaria from Bonny Island. So it's something that is doable. So different companies, we are the national program are ready to work with the private sector partner, because it's mostly now we're looking at public-private partnership to ensure that, using this stratification, we can begin to look at, targeting elimination in particular regions or ecological zones or states or even local government in the country. So it's something that is doable, and we really want to call on the private sector to partner with us to achieve this goal of malaria elimination in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Perpetual. The government has spoken, the private sector has spoken. What do we need? We are ready to go to take it forward. Thank you so much. Finally, I'll call on Dr. Francis Amenu to give a short closing remark, and then we'll end this session. Thank you. Dr. Francis is the head of a director of nutrition and health at Aliko Dangote Foundation and one of the major supporters of KAMA. Dr. Francis, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone that's actually contributed towards this webinar in terms of your presentation, your ideas. I think it's just like the question the Ochuko asked, whether we still like to take this forward. Definitely, because there are so many things we have to unpack for us to have a gripper understanding on all those issues, a deeper understanding of those issues. Again, because there are so many things that have been we're exposed to today. And one of them is available opportunities for vector control in Africa and specifically in Nigeria, considering what KAMA has as a malaria strategic plan, coming soon. Then the business cases that we have listened to, what works and what did not really work. And then we need to look at all those things that will guide where to put our resources to. And then those gaps and challenges that we have listened to, I think there are quite a number of innovations that have really penciled down. And then trying to look at how these will definitely align with what my own foundation is doing, and other foundations and other businesses and other sectors will definitely be contributing. And then the expected or available resources for vector control interventions in Nigeria. I think the bottom line is still that we need to put in place an integrated management to maximize all our efforts and towards effective, locally adaptive, sustainable vector control. So we need to put this in place. And as a member of KAMA, finally, I would like to call on all the private sector just to add my voice to that of Ochuko, to continue to play the role that we're already playing in malaria control in Africa and in Nigeria in particular, with a number of engagement modalities that we have in place. Let's keep engaging in advocacy and lobbying that we are doing, using the voices and leadership of our various benefactors. Then the multi-company coalitions that are already in place to support national programs with a private sector focus. And I think when we come together, the private sector, the public and private sector will have the opportunity of learning one thing or the other. And like what Linda said, complementarities are really the key, the principle that we need to adopt in working together. And then the financial support to malaria programs. We have had much of evidence generation that we need to improve on our overall programming, as presented by the National Nigerian Medical Research Institute, which is very, very key to whatever we do. We need locally developed or generated evidence to really support what we do, because various sectors and sections of the country require various approaches that need to be done. And then finally, implementation of high quality malaria treatment and control products and services, which was emphasized so much, both within and outside the fence, as we call it. Aliko Dangote Foundation is one of those organizations that have been involved with addressing malaria in the workplace. And then we try to support the National Elimination Program, which now, based on this renewed effort, we're going to really sit together this year and see how we engage, help in our own engagement, and then see what we can really do together. But again, above all, to really see beyond all this, and then try and develop what we call adaptive policy approach to strengthen health systems, because that's very, very important. We keep on living our health systems and we're going out of it. We have to still find a way. And we have a lot of issues that we can really bring in, interventions that can come together and help us to actually strengthen our prepare and create a responsive system for our health system, especially in Nigeria. The Aliko Dangote Foundation is actually looking towards that and would like to work with all. And I finally call on all the companies, like Shugo said, to adopt best practices in their interventions and try a combination of use of all these approaches, LLINA and IRS and all the rest, and outdoor spraying. You can pick a community to see the effectiveness of the combined intervention as a model to duplicate in other communities. And I think this is how we can all guarantee that zero malaria, as we'll be celebrating soon in the next month to come, celebrating Malaria Day. Then malaria, we should know zero malaria start with our respective companies. It starts with our respective employees, our communities, and our countries and our continent. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for this opportunity for really listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. Thank you. I'm clapping to the announcement that Dr. Perpetual actually made. That is a step forward. We're moving the needle forward. I just want to acknowledge somebody in the room. He just joined us. Professor Babatunde Salako, Director General of NIMA. He just joined the call, so I want to acknowledge you. We are looking forward to your contribution at the press briefing session. Thank you so much for joining us. And then for us to know that there will be subsequent conversation around this, we will reach out to all the participants and all the speakers to see how we can move this forward. And also, KAMA is organizing a series of events tied to World Malaria Day and moving and subsequent months. We will definitely connect with you all. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thanks.